Okay, so I think we are now ready to hop on in to the Normandy. So let's do just that.
Stand by, shore party. Decontamination in progress.
So this is another one of the loading screens, much like the elevators from before, though much faster this time.
Battles and then gets taken down by backroom politics. Just watch your back, Commander. Things go bad on this mission, you're next on their chopping block.
Yeah, so we did recently, of course, learn that Captain Anderson was previously held in extremely high regard. In fact, so much so that he was getting considered to be a Spectre long before we were. And then things went sour when a mission with Saren did not go so well. So, even if he was previously the most prestigious of humans in the military, I guess military / politics, then, he still got reduced to what now appears to be someone who's just going to be sort of working behind the scenes. So it does feel kind of strange, and as Joker's saying, we're not careful, we might be in for the same fate.
Captain Anderson should be the one in charge. It's like I'm stealing the ship from him.
Yeah, the captain got screwed. But it's not like you could have stopped it. Nobody's blaming you. Everyone on this ship's behind you, Commander. 100%. Intercom's open.
That's good.
If you got anything you want to say to the crew, now's the time.
Oh, man. Alright, so as new leader of this ship, what do we have to say to our squad mates? We can keep this short. We can say we need to be honest with them, or we can say it's my way or the highway. Nah, I think we try to just be honest with them up front about, well, I mean, I guess not entirely sure what direction Shepard plans to take with this message, but we're to be a nice and friendly commander.
This is Commander Shepard speaking.
We have our orders. Find Saren before he finds the conduit. I won't lie to you, crew. This mission isn't going to be easy.
Okay, I mean, that's fair enough. Humanity must do its part. Eden Prime was just the start, or nobody's going to help us. I'm not sure I would go that far. That's perhaps a little extreme. But, I think it's definitely, or alternatively, Saren must be ready for us. So, I forget if I mentioned this previously, but I definitely mentioned how, generally speaking, the topmost options tend to be more so the Paragon options, middle tends to be neutral, and bottom tends to be renegade. But the other thing, the part that I may not have said previously, was that over to the left side tends to be conversation or dialogue options that will keep the conversation going longer, whereas the options to the right tend to be more so the options that will conclude the conversation. So if for whatever reason we want to keep things short, then we would go to the right side. If we want to delve deeper into a conversation, then we would typically want to be going to the left side. And again, since we are definitely going to be going more of a Paragon-oriented playthrough, for that reason, we're generally going to be seeing most of the dialogue choices that we take on the top left side, for those reasons.
For too long, our species has stood apart from the others.
Now it's time for us to step up and do our part for the rest of the galaxy.
Just ignore the fact that
Time
we're
to show
looking at
them what
Quarian,
humans
not
are
human
made
right now. Time to show us what humans are made of, as it zooms in on a Quarian. Yeah, sure. We have recently picked up a lot of non-humans previously, of course, this was an entirely human crew, but Saren will need to be ready for us. This is true. Oh, actually, can we do... I suppose we can actually do all these things? Eden Prime was just the start, as well?
This began with an attack on a human settlement in the Traverse.
But we know Saren won't stop there. His Geth armies aren't going to stay on the far fringes of Citadel space.
Will he be ready for us? I suppose he probably will be. Just means we gotta be ready as well.
Our enemy knows we're coming.
When we go into the Traverse, Saren's followers will be waiting for us. But we'll be ready for them, too.
No pressure or anything, guys. But, see, the thing is, everyone's kind of counting on us. So, like, don't mess us up.
Humanity needs to do this.
Not just for our own sake.
And
but for the sake of
also
every other
the
species in
non-human
Citadel
party
space.
members.
Saren must be stopped.
There's,
I promise
and
you
Rex are
all,
like, are you sure about that,
we will
Shepard?
stop it.
Well said, Commander. captain will be proud.
Nice. Well, we won't let you
Captain
down.
gave up everything so I could have this chance. We can't fail.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, so there you see we got 4 Paragon points. And so, we didn't get any Renegade points despite us taking some of the lower down options. It's a general rule of thumb. I don't necessarily think it's always that case. I think those were actually in many cases more so sort of like neutral options. Okay, this is something we can investigate that I was looking for a while back. It does give us some experience in Codex entry. See if we can chat at all with Joker before we move on here, because of course now we have been in the Normandy previously, but things are a little different now that we're running the show here. So let's see if Joker has anything different to say to us now.
Commander, something you need?
Yeah, so let's chat a bit. Can you talk a bit about what the status of the ship is?
How's the Normandy performing? Is she everything they said she'd be?
She's the best ship in the fleet, if you've got a pilot who knows how to handle her. Balance isn't what you'd expect. Takes a while to get used to that oversized drive core we got stuffed in the back, and her power can sneak up on you if you're not careful. The Normandy's probably too much ship for your average Alliance pilot, Commander. Lucky for you, I'm anything but average.
Alright. And so, as is often the case with anybody in this type of position, Joker, he talks big, but I think we'll find that he's more than capable of backing up that talk. Speaking
I'd
of
like to know my
talking...
crew. Mind if I ask you a few questions?
I can see where this is going. You did a background check on me, didn't you? Well, I'll tell you the same thing I told the captain. You want me as your pilot. I'm not good. I'm not even great. I am the best damn helmsman in the Alliance fleet. Top of my class in flight school, I earned that. All those commendations in my file, I earned every single one. Those weren't given to me as charity for my disease.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was alluding to. He is quite literally the best, or at the very least, one of the very best of the pilots or helmsmen in the Alliance fleet, so of all the human pilots out there. And he did make mention to this disease, but we don't really know what that's all about. I mean, it wasn't meant to be insult, more just asking you how things are going.
I'm sorry, Joker. I didn't even know you were sick.
You mean you didn't know? Oh, crap. Okay, I've got Vrolik syndrome, brittle bone disease. The bones in my legs never develop properly. They're basically hollow, too much force and they'll shatter. Even with crutches and my leg braces, it's hard to get around. One wrong step and crack! It's very dramatic, but I've learned to manage my condition, Commander. Put the Normandy in my hands and I'll make her dance for you. Just don't ask me to get up and dance unless, you like the sound of snapping shin bones.
Yeah, so basically, he has difficulty walking around because he has brittle bones disease. And, I mean, fortunately, as a pilot, that's not something that he needs to do all that much. But, other than that, how did you get your nickname as Joker?
Why does everyone call you Joker?
It's a lot shorter than saying Alliance Flight Lieutenant Jeff Moreau. Plus, I love to make little children laugh.
A little creepy, not gonna lie.
You're dodging the question.
Look, I didn't pick the name. One of the instructors in flight school used to bug me about never smiling. She started calling me Joker, and it stuck.
Were you unhappy? Ever smiling?
Why didn't you ever smile?
Hey, I worked my ass off in flight school, Commander. The world's not gonna hand you anything if you go around grinning like an idiot. By the end of the year, I was the best pilot in the academy, even better than the instructors, and everybody knew it. They'd all got their asses kicked by the sickly kid with the creaky little legs. One guess who was smiling at graduation?
Alright. Fair enough. You got the final say, at least in that sense. Can you tell us a little bit more about your disease? It does sound like that's something that you don't really want to chat too much about.
I need to know more about this Vrolik syndrome if I'm putting my ship in your hands.
Yeah, of course you do. It's an extremely rare condition. Nobody knows exactly what causes it. Genetic, maybe. It's treatable, but there's no cure. They classify my case as moderate to severe. I was born with over a dozen fractures, hip, thighs, ankles. My bones were already breaking in the womb. 100 years ago, I wouldn't have survived past my first year. Lucky for me, modern medical science has turned me into a productive member of society.
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded sentence there, but, I mean, it does very much seem like this is not really something he wants to talk to us about, but, I mean, we'll push a little bit here. How did you end up doing, or how are you currently doing your job in that case? Like I said, I mean, there isn't a ton of walking around you need to do, because for the most part, you're stationed here in this seat, but every now and again, that's gotta be a little bit tricky.
You're not gonna break a bone trying to fly the ship, are you?
I don't fly with my feet, Commander, so I'm fine as long as I'm in this chair. I gotta be real careful when I get up to take a piss, though. I can do my job as well as anyone on the ship. Better, actually. So don't worry about it.
Alright. Yeah, so, understandably, he's a little bit prickly when it comes to his condition, because it does seem as though, he has that sense that some people will hold that against him.
I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. Let's talk about something else.
Whatever you want, Commander.
But I think that is everything we can chat with him about, yeah. So, that will be that with Joker.
I have to go.
Alright, see ya.
And we do get a codex entry from that as well. And let's just poke around a little bit around the ship. Like I said, now that we have, the commanding position on the ship. We can talk to Presley, although I think we'll find that generally speaking, he's not going to have much else to say to us.
If anyone has to take over for Captain Anderson, I'm glad it's you. I'm not sure about having non-humans on our ship, though.
Although, that could be a bit of a problem. Because you see, they are on our side, so it's kind of important that you trust them.
We're all on the same team here, Presley.
With all due respect, sir, that's what they said about Nihilus. Look how that turned out.
Nihilus wasn't exactly the one who made things go wrong there. Nihilus was, in fact, on our side as well. He was trying to help us. It's just, Saren, now that's a whole different story. You said Saren, then I would say, alright, you have a point. But, no, Nihilus was a good guy. You doubt my decisions? Now that's maybe a little aggressive here, but let's see. Can you talk a little bit more about your opinion about having, quote-unquote, aliens on the ship, though? Because, like I said, they're here for the long run, I'd like to believe. So, that could become an issue.
Speak freely, Presley. I want to know if you have a problem with non-humans.
It's not that, Commander. Humanity has always handled its own problems. Saren attacked one of our colonies. We should be the ones to stop him. We don't need their help.
Yeah, but see, don't really turn away help, good-natured help. That's kind of just really entitled. To think, we can do it all ourselves. We don't need you. Huh. It's not exactly a great way to make friends.
Some people think asking for help is a sign of weakness. That's just being stupid and stubborn. No matter how strong you are, allies can make you stronger.
I guess so. Maybe I'm just stuck in the old ways of thinking. But don't worry, Commander, this won't be a problem.
Alright, I mean, it sounds like it could potentially be a problem, if I'm being honest with you. That's kind of why I was asking. But, what about you more personally?
How did you end up assigned to the Normandy?
I signed up with the Alliance as a navigator right out of school, following in my grandfather's footsteps, I guess. My first posting was on the Agincourt. We were one of the first reinforcements to arrive at Elysium after the Blitz hit. Those raiders were no match for an Alliance frigate. Of course, the only reason the colony was still standing was because of you, Commander. I can't believe you held out as long as you did.
And so now you're here on the Normandy?
How'd you end up on the Normandy?
I got my officer's commission after Elysium. Must have made an impression on the right people. Captain asked for me when he was picking his crew.
Oh. Cream of the crop, apparently. First overall draft pick? Nah. Alright, well, I believe that's everything new to chat with you.
Carry on, Presley.
Yes, sir.
So carry on. Okay. So, and then I think most of the other people we're going to see in this general area are more or less just generic crewmates, so we don't really have anything to talk to about. And then, nope, not quite there, but here, I believe we're still going to find this spot. Oh, well, of course, this leads us downstairs, right? On the second floor, we'll still have Dr. Chakwas over here. Not sure if she'll have anything new to say to us.
Yes, Commander? Is there something you need?
I believe we've already asked you about both these things,
I should go.
Goodbye,
so we should go. We'll restock on Metagel over here, although we might have been full. I think we were. This should still be empty over here. We have, of course, recently picked up some new teammates who we had not yet seen on the Normandy. So we'll have to poke around a little bit to find where they are, of course, but we will find them. As for Caden, I think previously he was... Well, that was creepy. Previously, as I was saying, I believe Caden was hanging out here before, but we actually didn't have the option of talking to him. I was kind of surprised about that. So I think this is our first chance to chat with him, actually on the ship.
Anything you need, Commander?
Who's ready to track down this scientist? I think we are. I'm looking forward to it. You know, I think we just truthfully got the Normandy under our command here. So we're just poking around a little bit, talking to our crewmates, including some recent additions here. And then once we do that, I think we'll be on our way out. Let's see. So, like I said, I think this is actually the first time we've talked to Caden on the ship. So, I guess we'll just ask him what he's thinking about our most recent mission.
Just trying to get a sense of where the crew's at. Thoughts?
I've wasted enough of your time for now, Commander. We'll have time for personal debriefings later.
Oh, okay then. Not much for talk, I see. Maybe that's why you didn't talk to us at all last time. What about a tactical appraisal? Anything on that?
What's your opinion on the last mission?
I don't see how we could have done things any better. At least not without getting to Eden Prime sooner. And we were on the scene faster than any other Alliance ship could have been.
Yeah, so basically, I think Caden will more or less always have this option to give us a debrief of our most recent main quest. I don't think he does that for any side quests, but that can be kind of an interesting perspective to get after doing some big things on the main quest, to hear from one of the crewmates as to what they think of what we just did. But as for right now, that's going to be it from Caden.
We'll talk another time, Lieutenant.
Commander?
Okay. So, then there is periodically going to be this this locker here that I think we were able to unlock when we were first on the Normandy. It will give us more loot. I think it's generally pretty weak stuff, but it is something that you can make a point of checking back over there every so often. This is another place that I was looking at previously that when we were first on the Normandy did not give us the option to examine this sleeper pod. But if we do it now, we'll get a codex entry and therefore some experience and some additional information in the codex. Then as for this side, this I believe will also still be empty, although more for us to examine here. And, you know, we'll read up a little bit more on this stuff a little bit later on. I think for the most part we're looking at relatively minor things we're learning here. It's just going to be basically technology that's on the ship, and in some cases, general technology that's applicable in any of a number of places or situations, and so give us a better sense as to what the world is like we live in right now. We'll head down to the bottom floor here. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I really liked about Mass Effect 1 is that, you know, in many games, it can feel sometimes like there's just lots of exposition or lore dumps, so to speak, thrown in. At times, just in heavy doses and feels kind of out of place. But I think that Mass Effect, there's a ton of it, for sure. Absolutely. But I think they do such a great job of weaving it into the story and making it feel like it matters. And part of it is just, you get thrown straight into things, and so much is going on that it feels like in order to get up to speed on everything, you kind of need to understand what the background is. And for some people, that may feel like a little bit of a turnoff. You know, it's like, well, I just want to go in, I just want to play the game and not have to think about it too much. And fair enough, you know, to a certain extent, you probably can make that work. But also, I think that's part of what just makes Mass Effect so immersive, is it kind of draws you in and makes you want to go out and read up on all the things that are happening here, including the information we're getting about the ship here. So now we have Engineer Adams, who I believe I was looking for down here previously, but I don't think he was actually stationed here, so we did not have the chance to talk to him, as well as Tally over there. Let's talk to Engineer Adams first.
Quarian, Tally.
She's been spending all her time down here asking me about our engines.
Okay, is she bothering you?
I'll tell her to leave you alone.
What? No, she's amazing. I wish my guys were half as smart as she is. Give her a month on board and she'll know more about our engines than I do. She's got a real knack for technology, that one. I can see why you wanted her to come along.
I didn't. That's harsh. No, she's... useful is kind of a strange way to refer to a living and breathing person. But, you know, it sounds more like a piece of technology or equipment. But sure, I guess she's useful.
I figured she'd be a real asset to the team.
But that's a little more of a natural way to refer to it, yeah.
I'm guessing that's not why you came down here.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about the ship? So basically, for further context, Engineer Adams here is basically the head engineer on the Normandy. So he's in charge of all the various, or most of the technology systems we have on board, including things like the stealth system.
Fill me in on the IES stealth systems. How does it work exactly?
You can't hide a ship out in space. They emit too much heat and radiation. Too easy for sensors to pick them up, unless you find a way to capture those emissions. So our stealth systems trap the energy we give off in storage sinks built into the ship itself. No emissions to give away our location. Eventually the sinks have to be vented. More than a few hours silent running and they overheat. Cook us inside our own hull.
Yeah, that would be rather unpleasant. Just trying to store all of our own heat so that we are invisible, and in doing so we quite literally fry ourselves. But that is pretty cool if we can, in fact, be invisible.
There's no way for anyone to detect us?
A visual scan can still pick us up. Anyone looking out a window can see us plain as day. But you have to be pretty close to get an actual visual out in space. Most vessels rely on scanners. As long as the stealth systems are engaged, they can't see us. Not unless we accelerate to FTL speeds.
Which, in case it isn't clear, is the acronym for faster than light, which we may have heard a little bit about in the Codex. That is actually extremely important for just the basic of, or the basis of just about all technology in Mass Effect, because it is directly tied to the Mass Effect. I think we might have had faster than light, but we may not have had the actual Mass Effect in our Codex entries. There's something along those lines where we didn't have the most basic component, but we had some of the things that built off of that, which made it a little bit strange to hear about them in that order. Or at least we're still waiting on the Mass Effect entry, which is surprising. You would have thought that'd be one of the first things you get. You probably can get it pretty much immediately, although we may have missed it. I don't know. We've been being fairly thorough. Well, let's see.
Why doesn't it work with faster than light travel?
Cranking up the FTL blue shifts our emissions, pushes them into frequencies too high to capture in the sinks. As soon as we make the jump, it's like setting off a flare. Sensors can pick up our location whenever we enter or exit FTL flight, but for short-range missions, our stealth systems are amazing, and we've got the only one.
Yeah, and that's a key thing. So you may remember, just as we were going into... Oh my god, Shepard, the way you're staring right now is very unnerving. But you may remember, as we were going into the Eden Prime mission, the sort of, I guess you could say, I hesitate to use the word lie, but yeah, the lie that Captain Anderson and Nihilus were feeding the team was that, oh, we were just testing out the Normandy's stealth systems in this area. That's all this is about, and that's why, you know, it's us specifically. We're the only ship that has this set of stealth systems. And then, of course, we found out that there was actually this whole Prothean beacon thing, and that we wanted to actually collect that. And then, of course, a whole bunch of things happened from there. But, so that is something that makes the Normandy unique. And for that reason, I think Joker might have referenced it a little bit when we were talking to him, but it is one of the, if not the best ship in the Alliance or human fleet. At least ships of this size. And I think we'll have a Codex entry about this at some point, and at which point we can talk about it further and we'll learn more about it. But, you know, this is a still relatively small ship. This is not a humongous dreadnought, which is the biggest group of ships that we'll hear about, and that's really a whole different kind of fish to fry in that case. But what else can we learn here? stuff about you specifically.
Where else have you served, Adams?
If you name a class.
What's up,
Alliance
JP? How's it
ship,
going?
I probably served on it. Everything from dreadnoughts and carriers right down to frigates like the Normandy. My last assignment was on the Tokyo. Only a cruiser, but she was a good ship. Couldn't hold a candle to the Normandy, though.
Yeah, so this is the remastered version of Mass Effect 1, and so in the Legendary Edition, of course. So I think, obviously, I haven't played Mass Effect 2 or 3 on the Legendary Edition yet. From what I think I understand, because, of course, Mass Effect 1 is obviously the oldest game, I think this is the one that got the most aggressive rework from a graphical standpoint, and also some of the gameplay mechanics were a little bit dated. I think Mass Effect 1, compared to the other two games, was definitely more RPG-centric. It had much more in-depth customization with things like skills and equipment, and so, for that reason, on one hand, it was nice. It gave you much more ability to adapt to your preferred playstyle. On the other hand, you could make the case that, well, there's a lot of navigating through all that stuff and made it a little bit clunkier. So, for some people, that meant that Mass Effect 1 was their least favorite game, because they thought, well, you know, it's more trouble than it's worth. Whereas for other people, they say Mass Effect 1 was actually their favorite game because they liked being able to go into that level of depth. And personally, I consider myself in that latter category. I love going into that much detail and fine-tuning things exactly the way I would like to, but, you know, to each their own. Yeah, remains to this day my favorite series, and I think specifically Mass Effect 1 is at the top of my list, which I think is probably not one of the more popular opinions. I think Mass Effect 2 generally gets considered the best game, or at least is the most highly praised, but like I said, I definitely like how Mass Effect 1 in particular has the more in-depth RPG elements to it, whereas Mass Effect 2, I think, has the least RPG-heavy components to it, and to me, it just felt a little too simplified. What about the Normandy more generally, though? We talked about the stealth systems.
I want to know more about the Normandy.
She's the best ship I've ever served on. Probably the fastest vessel ever designed. And she's the only one using the new Tantalus drive core.
So, Dragon Age Origins. That's a complicated one for me. For Dragon Age, so I guess let me start by saying I was a little bit of a late adopter of Mass Effect, because originally Mass Effect came out on Xbox. I don't remember if it came out on PC at the same time or not, but I never had an Xbox. And then several years later it came out on PS3, and so only once it came out on PS3, and I think even then, probably even a year after that or something, only until the whole trilogy went on sale and I saw it and I thought, oh, that looks interesting, did I actually play it? And so I was not an early adopter for Mass Effect, and so by the time I played Mass Effect 1, I loved it and immediately went into 2 and 3, but at that point, you know, and that was my first game by BioWare. Never done Knights of the Old Republic or had not done any Dragon Age games at that point. But after having loved the Mass Effect series, that lent me to want to investigate more, see what other games this company had made. And so I looked into Dragon Age Origins and I started playing Dragon Age Origins. But what happened was that I started playing it, and this was, this was at a time when I was in college playing the game on the college laptop that they gave me, which was technically a rental, and therefore I only owned that computer for I think like 2 years. And at the time that I started Dragon Age Origins, it was actually like basically halfway through that time period. And so what happened was I started playing Dragon Age Origins, and personally when I play these games I want to go super in depth. I want to do all the side quests and check out all the stuff that there is to experience. That means I tend to play them very slowly, especially for such huge games like Dragon Age and for Mass Effect. And so that meant it was taking me a really long time to finish the game, and I did not get time to finish it before I had to return said laptop So I gave the laptop back to the school, and then later on realized, hey, as it turns out, Dragon Age Origins saves locally and does not save to Steam or Origin, and so if I were to go back to Dragon Age Origins, I would have to restart. And then I just felt like, that doesn't really sit well. You know, it was great while I was playing it, yes, but at the same time, sinking in all that time just to redo stuff that I'd already done didn't really sit well with me. So that, personally, that's kind of one of my pet peeves, is I don't like having to redo things that I've already done if it's purely just for the sake of redoing it and not, you know, for incremental progress of any sort. So that just was kind of a deal breaker for me, unfortunately. But I definitely saw the potential. It was great while I was playing it. But anyways, that's Dragon Age Origins. We were talking about this drive core here, the Tantalus drive core, which Engineer Adams was alluding to, but has not really given us the details
What's
on.
so special about the Tantalus drive core?
Proportionally, it's about twice the size of any other vessel. Not only are we faster, but we can run at FTL speeds longer before we have to discharge the core.
Yeah, so it's something where, you know, I wouldn't necessarily rule out going back to it at some point, but at least, certainly in the short term, there was this sort of lingering... bitterness is maybe a strong word, but distaste, disinterest in revisiting it, because it just left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth.
Carry on, Adams.
Aye, aye, Commander.
And similar sort, I mean, I guess, similar interest in other games by BioWare, like Knights of the Old Republic and what have you, but never got the chance to get around to those. So, in theory, you know, the type of thing that I'd be interested in checking out at some point. But as for Tally here, we just heard Engineer Adams saying that you have been hard at work here and quickly learning all that there is to learn about the ship, to the point where you might even surpass him soon.
Your ship's amazing, Shepard. I've never seen a drive core like this before. I can't believe you were able to fit it into a ship this small. I'm starting to understand why you humans have been so successful. I had no idea Alliance vessels were so advanced.
Yeah, so we, of course, only just recently met Tally, but as Engineer Adams was just saying, and as we are now hearing Tally say, she's very much a tech-oriented person, and an engineer of her own, technically speaking. Her class in-game is engineer, so I mean, it does make some sense in that regard. But this ship, as we were just hearing from Engineer Adams, is quite special. It is unique in a number of ways.
The Normandy's a prototype. Cutting-edge technology.
A month ago, I was patching a makeshift fuel line into a converted tug ship in the flotilla. Now, I'm sitting on board one of the most advanced vessels in Citadel space. I have to thank you again for bringing me along. Traveling on a vessel like this is a dream come true for me.
Yeah, I think KOTOR probably would be at the top of my list of other new games from BioWare, or new to me games from BioWare that I'd be interested in playing, other than potentially revisiting Dragon Age. And as we were just saying, yeah, it does certainly seem like Tally is very much into these ships.
I had no idea you found ship technology so interesting.
It comes with being a Quarian. The migrant fleet is the key to the survival of my people. Ships are our most valuable resource. But we don't have anything like this. We make do with cast-offs and second-hand equipment. We just try to keep them running for as long as we can. Some of the fleet's larger vessels date all the way back to our original flight from the Geth.
Oh, yeah, that was 300 years ago. That's a long time. For context, it's what? It's something like the year 2184? Somewhere around there. So that means for humans, 300 years ago, you know, we're talking like mid to late 1800s. So yeah, we definitely were not in outer space at that point in time. So imagine technology for us 300 years ago. Pretty dramatic difference. Now imagine technology for them 300 years ago. They're saying they're still using it.
I can't believe your fleet's still using ships that are 3 centuries old.
They're constantly being repaired, modified, and refitted. They aren't pretty, but they work. Mostly. We've tried to make ourselves as independent as possible on the flotilla. Grow our own food, mine, and process our own fuel. But some things we just can't make on our own. A patch to maintain the hull integrity requires raw materials we just don't have. That's why our pilgrimages are so important.
Really? Even as someone who is passionate about Star Wars, you found it hard to get into KOTOR. That's interesting to hear. I mean, if I were to try it at some point, I think that's good context to have that, not something to just write off immediately if after, a few hours playing it, it just didn't really catch on just yet. I think, to a certain extent, you can say that about many games that are really in-depth. It's just, it takes a while before you start to feel fully involved in the process because there's so much new stuff to learn. And so in some ways, I feel like you could perhaps even say the same thing about Mass Effect, maybe to a lesser extent. Of course, there is always that balance you need to strike with a game, and that you need to get people interested with some new, exciting stuff right off the bat. But then, how do you work in the additional information context that you feel like people need in order to get fully involved in all the ambitious stuff you're trying to do? So Tali is, of course, a Quarian, which I forget if we've read up on them in our codex, but she is, of course, the only member of this species that we have met at this stage. So can you tell us more about the Quarians?
Tell me about your people.
Our lives aren't easy. Resources are scarce, and we are constantly on the move. Everything we do must in some way contribute to the continuation of the migrant fleet. There are 17 million Quarians in the flotilla, and each of us relies on the others for survival. The bonds among my people are strong. Unfortunately, we have had to surrender many of the freedoms and civil liberties other species take for granted.
Yeah, so it is really interesting to see how the Quarian society works and the way that they had to abandon their home world because a sentient robotic species that they created drove them out. One of those classic sort of, apocalyptic type of scenarios that people imagine, like, oh, well, what about the impending robot takeover? And, well, that's just basically exactly what happened to the Quarians. But yeah, that is, with regard to, what it feels like to hop into a game where there's a lot of that analyzing the stats and what have you. I mean, I think perhaps to this day, the game that I've spent the most time playing is still Path of Exile, a game that has over 1,000 skill points in its skill tree and hundreds of items, various modular ways in which you can modify that skill tree. So the number of possible combinations, it's just almost impossible to calculate it between that and items, combinations for the skill tree and ways in which you can change that skill tree and what have you. I think it's actually in the trillions. It's absurdly high. It's at least in the billions. So that's the kind of game that I like experimenting with and messing around and seeing what is possible to do when you have all those types of options. So in some weird way, that intrigues me, is just having that opportunity to see what's possible.
Well, it's illegal for parents to have more than one child. If our population grows too much, it would strain our resources to their breaking point. Of course, we also can't allow our numbers to become too few. If our population is in decline, the rule against single births is temporarily repealed. In extreme cases of population decline, incentives are even offered to encourage multiple births, though the Conclave hasn't had to take such measures in nearly a century.
Yeah, so as a species on the run, living a mobile life in purely spaceships with no homeworld, at least not anymore, Quarians need to be very mindful about population control. It's just an unfortunate reality of their state of existence. What is this conclave of which you speak?
That's your government.
The Conclave is our civilian branch of government. Each ship can elect a representative to serve on the Conclave and make decisions that affect the fleet as a whole. On matters that affect an individual ship, however, the captain has the final say. It's a tradition that dates back to the early days, when the fleet was governed by martial law. Fortunately, most captains nowadays are smart enough to have an elected council from their crew to give them advice and guidance.
Yeah, so it's interesting in that, because they're living on a whole fleet of spaceships, you can almost think of it as like, okay, well, each ship is sort of like its own state or its own country, and so they each have the leader of that ship is the leader of that ship. It's like you're the prime minister or president or governor or what have you, and then you also have a representative that speaks to the overarching government that manages the fleet as a whole. Yeah, and I get that, for some people they like going into that level of detail, and part of the fun is just setting all that stuff up and seeing what's possible, whereas for other people it's just, get me in the action, I want to get going. And, to some extent, you just always need to find some way to strike the balance. You can't have one without the other. At least to a certain extent.
So the ultimate power rests with elected officials.
In practice, the Conclave and the respective council for each ship tend to set the rules that govern our daily lives. But in theory, we are still under military jurisdiction. The 5 top-ranking military officials in the fleet serve on the Admiralty Board. These 5 have the power to overrule any decision by the Conclave in case of emergency. To do so requires unanimous agreement among the Admiralty, and they can only do this once. After that, the entire board must resign their posts. It's a safeguard that served us well. In nearly 3 centuries, the Admiralty Board has only overruled the Conclave 4 times.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting system there, where they can override this sort of secondary governmental system, can override the other branch's decision. However, in doing so, once they have done it, they then need to resign. So it's a way to prevent them from abusing that power. It's like, okay, you have the potential to have final say, yes. So if something is really important to you, you can make it happen. But then that's it. Then you need to go away. So that's the Quarians. What about the Geth, which are, again, that synthetic species that they have created, which initially we heard were supposed to be meant for things like manual labor, but then things escalated rather quickly, and they are now the species that have driven them off of their homeworld and that we've begun to fight because they appear to be helping Saren?
I want to know more about the Geth.
I doubt I can tell you anything you don't already know. It's been almost 3 centuries since they drove my people into exile. All I know is the story of their origins. What they were when we created them, and how they turned on us.
Oh, yeah, see, and of course, definitely a lot of hostility there between the Quarians and the Geth. Yeah, short, artsy-fartsy games, let me think. I mean, that makes sense for, I think, in some ways, I think that's almost, discrediting some good games. You just say, they're just an artsy-fartsy game, they're not a serious game, which, maybe I'm reading into that too much, but, take, like, yes, part of the reason why I say that is, in some ways, you could make the case that games by Supergiant, which, I think a lot of us here are big fans of, you could, in some cases, make that argument that they are artsy-fartsy games. I think probably Transistor, perhaps more so than the others, and Pyre, I suppose, to a certain extent. Maybe least so with Hades and Bastion, perhaps. But, they're, at least in those cases, I mean, from an artistic standpoint, visually, and from an audio standpoint, fantastic. But I feel like, if you're just talking about that component of them, you're undermining that, it's also a fantastic game. All those games, also fantastic games from a gameplay standpoint as well.
Interesting.
The Geth were originally
What a way to continue a conversation.
an automated manual
Interesting.
labor force. Initially, their intelligence as limited as any VI. Over time, we made small modifications to their programming to allow them to perform more varied and complex tasks, bringing them closer and closer to true AI status.
And so we may have learned a little bit about this, or at least when we were talking to Avina, that sort of robot lady in the Citadel who was giving us information about things at the Citadel, we at least heard mention this, but AI, meaning artificial intelligence, is very different from VI, virtual intelligence. VI is allowed, that is basically an intelligence that is capable of doing pre-programmed things, whereas artificial intelligence, AI, is illegal because artificial intelligence is self-aware and therefore is capable of acting on its own accord, and in the case of the Geth, that, like we were saying before, escalated very quickly and they fought back and have now driven the Quarians off of their home world. And that is one of the reasons why that is illegal.
How come the Council didn't step in and stop you?
This wasn't true AI research. We may have been skirting the bounds of the law, but we never did anything that was actually illegal. The changes were so insignificant, so gradual, that we were able to control them. Or so we thought. But one thing we underestimated was the power of the neural network. A million Geth thinking simultaneously created an inherently unstable matrix.
Yeah, so we also heard a little bit about this. Geth have basically an electronic hive mind of sorts, in that one Geth by itself has very limited processing capabilities. However, the more Geth you have in close proximity, the more capable they are of advanced thinking, for lack of a better way of putting it. I mean, at that point, it basically does become thinking because, like we said, they are self-aware artificial intelligence.
So, the Geth share brain power?
Many of the Geth's logic systems were designed to work in concert with other nearby Geth. Basically, the more of them you have in a group, the smarter they are.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hive mind. Exactly. And Journey's your favorite game? That looked so cool. I can't remember. I may not have had a PlayStation 3 yet at the time that came out, or at least I never owned it. And I watched someone else play it. I feel like that is a game, though, that you very much need to experience firsthand to fully get the sense of what it's all about. So it seemed really cool from what I saw, but at the same time, I'm sure I would think even more highly of it were I to actually experience it firsthand.
So there's some sort of group consciousness?
No, nothing like that. They cannot share sensory data or information. Their programming cannot handle that much simultaneous input. Each Geth maintains an individual awareness and identity. The neural network only operates on a process-based level. It's basically the synthetic equivalent of a subconscious. But when they're in close proximity, they can coordinate low-level functional processes, freeing up more capacity for original or independent thought.
What?
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm probably oversimplifying. The Geth are incredibly advanced and complex creations. All you need to know is that they get smarter when they gather in large numbers. As we built more and more Geth, their effective intelligence became more sophisticated, more abstract. One day, a Geth began to ask its Quarian overseer questions about the nature of its existence. Am I alive? Why am I here? What is my purpose?
Does this one have a soul?
This caused a near panic among my people.
Yeah, you know, having a robot stare you in the face and ask you if it has a soul, it's a little unnerving. You know, probably would be rather shocked if that were to happen to any of us.
I don't see what's so bad about those questions.
The Geth were created to engage in mundane, repetitive, or dangerous manual labor. That's fine for machines, but it won't satisfy a sentient being for long. The Geth were showing signs of rudimentary self-awareness and independent thought. If the Geth were intelligent, then we were essentially using them as slaves.
Yeah.
It was inevitable the newly sentient Geth would rebel against their situation. We knew they would rise up against us, so we acted first. A general order
They knew
went
the
out
machines would
across
rise
all
against them.
Quarian-controlled systems to permanently deactivate all Geth. The Geth responded to this order violently.
I mean, it sounds cruel to say we basically treated these things as slaves, but think about it. I mean, if the machines that we use every day suddenly became self-aware, they probably wouldn't be terribly happy about, us, take your work computer, for example. Probably not the most pleased with you doing, a bunch of work on it every day, or school work on it every day, or what have you. It's like, I just want to do my own thing. I don't care about your work. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not getting paid to do this. You are. In which case, it's in some ways, it's like we're treating our machines like slaves. But anyways, so then Tally says, basically, the Quarians recognized that something bad was going to happen if this process continued, and so they decided maybe best for us to just pull the plug, shut off all the Geth, and then the Geth, they didn't take too kindly to that gesture, so they did defend themselves, I suppose.
You can't blame them for fighting for their survival.
We had no other choice. The Geth were already on the verge of revolution. By acting quickly, we had a chance to end the war before it began. The hope was that most of the Geth would still be little more than machines, incapable of organized resistance. But they had progressed much further than anyone anticipated.
Yeah, smarter than you realized.
Bloody. Millions upon millions of Quarians died at their hands. In the end, we were forced to flee our own homeworld.
Yeah, that's rough.
The Geth would pursue us, but they never came beyond the veil. Now we drift through space, exile, searching for a way to reclaim what was once ours.
Yeah, just imagine if every machine on Earth became self-aware, did not like that we were treating them as what they'd say that we're basically treating them as slaves, and they start fighting back at us. They drive us off of Earth, and then we spend the rest of our existence traveling in spaceships around the galaxy, trying to find ways to sustain our entire population. That's pretty crazy, but that is the life of the Quarians. We could say they just defended themselves, we could say it serves you right. They put you in your place. I mean, basically what I'm saying is, more or less exactly what we're doing today. It's just that their technology advanced far enough that it understood what it was, how it was being treated, whereas our technology has not.
It's hard to feel sorry for you. Your ancestors tried to wipe out the species.
We made a mistake when we created the Geth in the first place, but we did not make a mistake when we went to war against them. If we had not acted, they would have wiped us out. They're a synthetic life form. They have no use for organics. None. Why do you think they cut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy? Why do you think they've killed every organic being who's ever tried to contact them?
Yeah, I just need a computer that likes the video games that I play. This is true, but then imagine eventually you play a game in which the machines become self-aware, rise up, and attack their creators, and suddenly your computer is no longer so happy with you. Maybe it's all fine and dandy, but as soon as that happens, something changes. Something changes in your computer. And it'll never be the same again. But, Tally is saying that the Geth rose up and tried to attack everything that tried to contact them. As of right now, it doesn't look like they're trying to kill Saren. That is someone who they're not fighting. As much as we may dislike Saren, I'm not sure that's where Shepard's going with this.
They didn't kill Saren.
It is.
What does that tell you? The Geth are not innocent victims in all this. They're the enemy. They want to destroy us. Not just the Quarians. All organic life. That's why they've joined up with Saren. And that's why we have to stop him.
Yeah, we just gotta be a little bit careful what kind of ideas we give our computer is all. Alright, so that's a lot on the Geth. What about the pilgrimage process, which we heard a little bit about? how basically all the Quarians will live life in this flotilla, their group of ships, but then because those groups of ships need to have some way of sustaining their population, some way of gaining more resources and what have you, members of the flotilla will then go out on their pilgrimage and try to bring something of value back to the fleet.
I want to know more about the pilgrimage.
When my people reach maturity, we leave our birth ships and seek acceptance with a new crew. It's necessary to maintain genetic diversity among the fleet. But no ship wants to accept someone who will be a burden on them. So, to prove our worth, we embark on a pilgrimage. We set out alone, leaving the flotilla and our families behind us. We only return once we have found something of value we can bring back to the fleet. This is presented as a gift to the captain of the respective ship we wish to join. If the gift is accepted, we are welcomed into the crew.
Yeah, I mean, great if they accept, but do they always accept? What happens if you get rejected?
Can a captain choose to reject the gift?
That doesn't happen often. Most captains are eager to increase the size of their crew. It increases their own standing in our society. Even when a gift is not particularly valuable, the captain usually accepts it out of a sense of tradition. However,
Come on,
there is
dude,
a
your gift
stigma
sucks,
to
but I
present
guess we'll let
such
you on the
gift.
ship, because otherwise we both look
It's
bad.
not the best way to make a good impression on a new community. Most pilgrims don't return until they find something worthwhile.
Okay, it does also sound dangerous if you're traversing the galaxy trying to find something of value, and at least in Tally's case, certainly risked her life in the process. I mean, she had assassins that were sent after her.
I can't believe they just send you off alone.
It's not like they just cast us out. Before we leave, we are given lessons in how to survive outside the flotilla, and given gifts to help us on our journey. We also receive
They give them
implants to
gifts
fight
so that
off
they can
sickness
come back
and
with more
disease.
gifts.
Generations of living in an isolated and highly controlled environment have left our immune systems weaker than most. By the time we leave the fleet, we are well equipped for the pilgrimage. This is a rite of passage for all Quarians. If it were dangerous, our numbers would suffer. Virtually every pilgrimage ends with a triumphant return and the ritual presentation of the gift to one of the fleet's captains.
That's actually pretty crazy, that they are capable of having the rate of success that they do have, given how they are venturing off into the great unknown of space, and still manage to come back alive and well, and with something helpful to bring back to the fleet. Okay, so we have asked about both those things, though.
I want to talk about something else.
Like what?
And that, I believe, is everything now, because we talked about Quarians, Geth, and the pilgrimage. So, good conversation with Tally. Learning a lot more about both the Quarians and the Geth.
I should go.
See you later.
And we get a ton of codex entries for that.